Hello, everyone. You do things a little bit differently here. We normally have Sam moderating, so I gather that I just look for hands and we have a conversation. I would just tell you that I'm here in Eastern Canada to build relationships. I was at the Montreal Chamber of Commerce yesterday, a second visit, letting them know that we're going to have a lot more visits to Montreal. We have an office in Ottawa, as you know, and one of our staff is going to be spending regular time building relationships there. I'm speaking tonight as well at another event, and then also at the Eurasia Group tomorrow. And the message is very simple, that we support big, major nation-building projects, and we would love to be able to partner with the companies that are going to help us build pipelines, as well as make sure that we're supporting our fellow provinces on their aspirations to build major projects as well. And with that, be happy to take any questions. Yeah.
Hi, Raheem Abba, National Post. So nice to finally ask you a question in person.
Nice to see you.
So you've communicated that you would like to be in a place where you could submit a West Coast pipeline for consideration to the Major Projects Office next spring. Will you be in a position to do so if the West Coast tanker ban is still in place by then?
Well, I can tell you that we are hoping to have some kind of agreement with the Prime Minister by Grey Cup, where he gives a clear indication that he's prepared to address the 9 laws that have been creating an investment climate that is hostile to private investment. The Pathways project, which we're committed to reach carbon neutrality by 2050, as well as a bitumen pipeline to the BC coast. So we're working with the Prime Minister on an earlier timeline than that, and we're very hopeful that that will come to fruition. So we'll know in a few more weeks. But the message I've had to the Prime Minister is that it's the oil sands companies who need to have confidence that they're going to be allowed to expand production in order to be able to fill a pipeline. And at the moment, because of the laws that are in place, they don't have that confidence. So that's why we have to deal with these things as a package.
Laura Osmond with The Logic. Can you just give us a sense of some of the folks you're meeting with here on the Hill today as you try to send that message to Ottawa, and give us a sense of how that conversation with the Prime Minister went yesterday?
Well, I did meet with the Prime Minister yesterday. I've met with the Conservative caucus as well as leader Pierre Poilievre, and I have a number of media interviews to do this afternoon, but it's a Canada Strong and Free event this evening. I think they have a few hundred people there, so I'm not quite sure who is going to be there, but I'll meet with lots of folks who are there. And the conversation with both the Mr. Poilievre as well as with the Prime Minister Carney was the same. It's what can we do to build resource projects, build resource pipelines, be able to get our confidence back in our private investment sector. And I'm really hopeful that the Prime Minister will be able to meet that target of being able to sign an agreement with us by mid-November.
Hi. Nick Murray, Canadian Press. I just have some questions on the changes to the tier system.
Sure.
By many measures, the tier system likely wouldn't be compliant under the federal output-based pricing system, and so I'm curious whether you've gotten any assurances from the federal government that it wouldn't trigger the federal backstop.
Well, that's part of why we're having a conversation about how we adjust some of the programs. We want to maintain the carbon pricing at the provincial level. We've had carbon pricing since 2007. It's worked for us. We've invested nearly $2 billion in CO2 technologies, CO2 abatement technologies, including the Shell Quest project, the Carbon Trunk Line. We've mapped out 25 of our reservoirs for capturing CO2 in pore space. We have supported hydrogen. We supported bitumen beyond combustion, geothermal, direct air capture, lithium, nuclear studies. So it is worked for us. We want to be able to maintain that at the provincial level because, quite frankly, we don't think that the federal government would have the same level of investment in those kinds of technologies as we've been able to have in Alberta. The change to the tier program was really to allow the large companies who are big payers into the program. The bitumen companies pay about $300 to $400 million a year into the program. We want them to be able to recycle that back into supporting the Pathways project. So that was the purpose, is that we know that it's going to be an expensive project. We're prepared to offer an ITC of 12% rebate on capital cost, and the changes to tier were to enable that. We also had to freeze the carbon price at $95. You'll recall Quebec's carbon trading price is only $41. So we're already well above what the carbon trading markets are showing us. And the U.S. is going in a different direction. So we've got to have a price point that makes sense to continue having the industry be viable, but also high enough that it encourages investments in those technologies. The federal government's own Canada Growth Fund, when they're doing contracts for differences, they're signing those contracts at $86.50. Our price is at $95. So we think we're in the ballpark, but those are things that are open for discussion.
Just to quickly follow up on that, the Canadian Climate Institute was at the Environment Committee yesterday, and they said based on their conversations with some of the traders that the market price for some of those credits, it could be as low as $65. So are you concerned that there's enough incentive for companies to reinvest in clean technology with the credit price being so low?
Well, our price is a regulated price. It's $95. And so...
I mean, on the credits, like the cap system is one.
Well, I would say that this is part of the reason why we have a regulated environment, is because we know that we need to have a certain amount of dollars in order to make some of those investments worthwhile. And it is the case that if it gets too low, then you aren't going to have an investment. But if it gets too high, there's going to be no one to pay it because they're also going to go out of business. So you have to find where the right spot is. And we happen to think that $95 is the right spot, having talked to our industry players on that.
Hi, Premier Smith.
Hi.
Eva McKenna from CBC. I'm just wondering what Mark Carney's reaction was to the proposal that Alberta would be a proponent of a pipeline, and I'm also wondering if the emissions cap came up in your discussion yesterday.
I can tell you, just people shouldn't be surprised that we're a proponent. I mean, every other province has been proponents of very big projects. I mean, in different provinces, I think, doesn't Doug have a plan for $200 billion that he's about to spend on electricity? And I think that you've got a similar proposal in Quebec. Our competitive advantage happens to be in the oil and gas, which we own. The Resource Transfer Act transferred that to Alberta back in the 1930s. We have been hands off. We've partnered with the private sector to develop the project on our behalf. But what we've seen is that because of terrible policies for the past 10 years, we now have to step in to make sure that our product gets to market on behalf of our ratepayers. And so that's what we're doing. We hope to get it to a point where the private sector has confidence that it's going to be built. And one of the things that will give confidence is eliminating the emissions cap. We've seen a number of different analysts who have said that if you have an emissions cap that is so aggressive that you have to reach certain targets by 2030 or 2035, the companies will have to shut in by as much as 2 million barrels by 2035. So if you have to, if you're getting mixed messages, shut in 2 million barrels, you're not going to see them investing and growing it. That's why it's a partnership where we have to address the bad laws, agree to the Pathways project, as well as agree to a bitumen pipeline.
Hi, Rachel Aiello, CTV News. I'm just curious, would you support taxpayer dollars going into the construction of Keystone? And if Keystone was to be built, would you still want an additional pipeline to the West Coast?
We are taking a view all of the above. I mean, I think the world is now, instead of doing backcasting of where they want oil to be by 2050, they're doing forecasting based on what current policies are. And what I'm seeing is that they're aligning around the idea that by 2050, we may need 120 million barrels a day. So that's up from what we have today. And we think Canada should have a growing share of that growing market. So I would say all of the above. We think that there's an opportunity to go south, there's opportunity to go west, there's opportunity to go east, potentially to Churchill. So those are the things that we're looking at. But we just need a commitment on the part of Canada that they're going to partner with us on getting our products to market.
Dollars going towards
I don't think it's a success if taxpayer dollars have to be spent to build pipelines. Pipelines should be built by the private sector. If we're going through this exercise, we're doing it so that we can restore investor confidence again. We had $500 billion worth of private capital, we estimate, that was destined for our market that went elsewhere. So I don't think that there's a shortage of private sector dollars as long as you've got a regulatory environment that's going to support that investment. And that's what we're working towards. Hi.
Hi, Greg Quinn, Market News International. I'm glad you mentioned the private sector. I mean, there's government regulations, but the fact is Alberta's heavy crude is around $50 a barrel. That's substantially lower than its peaks. So doesn't that play a significant role in the decision of private investors to not step forward so far and build a pipeline? I
don't think so. I mean, what we've seen is that the differential narrowed quite a bit when we opened up Trans Mountain. The problem is having a single a purchaser. And when things get bottlenecked, that's what can cause the differential to blow out. But we know that just seeing how the Asian markets are responding to our product, we have a particular brand of heavy oil that is different than the Americans, so we're not in direct competition with them. Our brand of heavy oil competes more directly with Venezuela and Iran and Russia, and we think that we are a much more reliable trading partner for that kind of oil for our friends and allies. So I would say the feedback that we are getting is that they like our product, they want to see more of it. I spoke to the U.S. Fuels and Petrochemical Industry Association, and starting in January, we're going to be able to provide the specific type of grade available that they need for each of their refineries to be able to reduce costs. Right now, there's about 61 different grades, and we have the ability to send in batches through our APMC so that they can optimize the product going into their refineries. And so we've offered that as a service that we're going to start doing in January, and we think that that will help not only reduce costs for refineries but also optimize prices for producers and for our government.
I wonder also how you can promise stability to global investors when you've sort of put Alberta on the path to a referendum, and one that, you know, has legal questions around the legitimacy of 200,000 people putting the fate of a G7 country up to a coin toss, you know, legal questions around whether it adheres to the Clarity Act, international law around the recognition of nations, Indigenous land title, and the experience of Quebec and its success or lack of success in seeking independence. How can you be confident this is a proper way of proceeding?
Well, as you know, I haven't done that. I've been supporting a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. Thomas Lukasik is the person who's behind that petition campaign, and from what I'm reading, he sounds like he's gotten 200,000 signatures, so it may well be that he gets enough signatures for it to be able to put to a vote. It's also, he's operating on the old rules, which were having a higher bar and a lower period to collect. So that law was in place before I got in. So I would say that I'm watching it with great interest, and I've told Prime Minister Mark Carney that Justin Trudeau created an independence movement in Alberta, and he can take the wind out of it. All he has to do is just address the 9 bad laws that have depressed our economy for the past 10 years. And when I worry about investment capital, yeah, I'm really worried that we're going to have in the future the same 10 bad years that we had over the last 10 bad years because of the federal Liberal policies. So I would say that that's been the biggest depression to investment capital in our province. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to get to an agreement by mid-November so that we can turn the page on that. In the back there.
Bill Curry from the Globe. Premier Eby obviously is really ramping up his criticism of your pipeline proposal, calling it a fantasy. So how are you going to deal with the politics of that, given that you feel so strongly against this idea?
Well, I think Premier Eby's comments are un-Canadian and they're unconstitutional. I think that the Supreme Court has determined that the reason we have a country and have given trade and commerce power and control over ports and interprovincial infrastructure to the federal government is for exactly this reason, so that a parochial premier isn't able to block nation-building projects. So I think that the courts have been pretty clear on that. And I would hope that Prime Minister Mark Carney would realize it's his obligation to make sure that these kinds of projects get built. When you look at the value of bitumen, we believe that this project, if we could build it at 1 million barrels a day, even at today's prices, that would generate $20 billion a year for the Canadian economy, of which the governments take about 40%, and it's about half that goes to the federal government and half that goes to the provincial government. So that is a very high value, long-term return that all it takes is the Prime Minister to say yes. And so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get to that by mid-November.
Hi, Premier Smith. Émilie Bergeron, La Presse Canadienne. You referred to your appearance before Montreal Chamber of Commerce yesterday. You pledged for Quebec to exploit natural gas. So could you explain how does that specific message on natural gas for Quebec could serve your message of a need for a pipeline in Alberta?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that are connected. The first part is we've seen a deterioration of the manufacturing base in both Quebec and Ontario. And why is that? Well, manufacturing is very energy intensive. And now we have a situation where all of the power grids are constrained. And so if we're going to turn that around, we have to be investing in energy. Hydroelectric projects take a long time to come on stream, whereas natural gas can come on stream in a matter of years. And Quebec is 100% dependent on the United States for its natural gas supply. It gets it from Pennsylvania. Used to get it from us, but because of market changes, they now get it from the United States at higher price than they'd be able to get it from Western Canada, incidentally. But they also have about a 200-year supply of natural gas beneath their own feet in Quebec. And so they could be energy independent by developing out that resource, by putting it onto LNG export facilities and supporting Europe. Right now, gas comes from Alberta down to the Gulf Coast at a discount and then gets sold to Poland for $15 an MCF. Quebec could actually cut out that supply chain and be able to get those new markets with all the revenues associated with it, and also provide a new source of energy security that will allow them to expand their manufacturing base. So that's my message to Quebec, is that you have things that we want to buy. We want to buy steel. We'd like to be able to have Canadian companies that build the 42-inch pipe that we need rather than having to go to the U.S. We'd like Canadian companies to build the axles that we're currently getting from Quebec, and the steel beams that are from the U.S. The steel beams we're currently getting from the U.S. We want to be able to have natural gas turbines and the whole supply chain for AI data centers. We'd love to be able to get that from provinces like Quebec and Ontario rather than the U.S. So those are I think the constructive comments we need to have. So the next stage that we went to is the chamber president, Isabelle, proposed that we get the chambers of Ontario, Alberta, and Quebec together with the premiers of Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta to talk about how we can bring our supply chain home. And what does that look like? And I think that's a very exciting discussion, but make no mistake, if we're going to go back and rebuild our manufacturing base, we need to have a secure supply of energy to do it. And natural gas is one of the best options.
Quickly hear you on your reaction on President Trump new tariffs he announced yesterday on heavy trucks, and how do you think the federal government should respond to that?
Well, our approach has been that I don't love tariffs. I don't love it when they apply tariffs on us, and I don't love it when we apply tariffs on them. So I was glad to see that the Prime Minister changed the policy and made sure that the Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement compliant goods would not receive tariffs. I have to talk with our industry to see what kind of impact it's going to have, but it just underscores the point, is that what are the things that we can make close to home, and can we start making them close to home? We have a very robust industry here for autos. Why can't we be, and all of the auto parts, so why can't we be looking at ways that we can manufacture finished product all the way through to the end here, and be able to buy from each other? Doug Ford and I signed an MOU where we agreed that our fleet vehicles, that we would put them, the cars that are finished in Ontario, as a priority. I hope other provinces do the same. But that's the kind of thing that I think we have to respond to. If those are the areas that the U.S. wants to develop as an economy and disadvantage us, then we've got to find a way to buy from each other. I don't know how long this normally goes on for. I think that there's another premier who wants to come here. So I'll take because you guys do it differently. You'll just have to let me know when you want to kick me out. So.
I just wanted to go back to the bitumen pipeline that you tried to start with the $14 million you announced a few days ago. Following your announcement, a group of First Nation chiefs came out saying, we don't want a pipeline coming our way. We don't want, not now, not never. How do you go forward from there?
Well, you should go talk to the other First Nations chiefs who said the opposite. I mean, we've been supported by the Indian Resource Councils. Stephen Buffalo is the chair of that and part of our Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation. We also have support from Dale Swampy, National Coalition of Chiefs, who's also a voice from the community that wants to develop resources. So we have to remember that there is not unanimity in any province. There's not unanimity among any nations, and it's our job to do the consultation and do it right. And so that's part of the reason why my Indigenous Relations Minister, Rajan Sawhney, has already visited Port au Prince Rupert, begun the conversation with leadership. I think she's called 24 chiefs already, and we wanted them to know that we believe that the only way this will get built is with significant Indigenous ownership, and we have the ability to help underwrite that. And we'll see where the conversation goes.
Two more questions for her. Hi, Premier. Ryan Tumblety, Toronto Star.
Oh, hey.
Hi.
You used to be from Alberta.
I did, yeah. I wanted to ask about the Prime Minister and the Energy Minister have talked about pathways as part of maybe a grand bargain. that that project would have to go ahead before any sort of expansion of the oil sands and any sort of pipeline. Do you accept that? Do you accept that Pathways is an integral part of any kind of pipeline to the West Coast?
I would say that they're linked. The problem is that you can't ask the industry to take on a project that'll be $10 to $20 billion in cost with no additional revenue. So I would say that they have to go together, that we have to get a commitment to a new bitumen pipeline and the resources and the revenues that go along with that. Pathways have already committed that they want to be carbon neutral by 2050. So they've been leading in that effort. I'm glad that the Prime Minister is interested in it. We've been supporting it. It's part of the reason why we brought through an ITC and have changed our tier program. The federal government has got mechanisms to be able to help support it with ITCs as well as with their Canada Growth Fund. And it is part of our discussion, but it's got to be both.
And on the pipeline project, you talked about moving forward next spring, getting an answer by the Grey Cup. A lot of the other projects that are moving through the Major Projects Office have already been in negotiations and consultations with Indigenous groups for years. You know, I guess why do you feel this project has to move so much faster than any of these other projects?
Because it was already approved and ready to go. It already was a shovel-ready project. And then the federal government pulled the permit on it. So we have to update the negotiations today, find out if the traditional route for Northern Gateway is the right one or if there's needs to be a new one. But I would say that this one was in the queue 10 years ago and has been removed from the queue because of federal government action. And part of the way of restoring that wrong is for them to mark a reversal. So we will have all the technical work done by March, but we would like the commitment that it will go ahead by Grey Cup. We'd like it on the major project list along with Pathways. In the back.
Mylène Crête de La Presse. In your meeting with Prime Minister Carney yesterday, did you get a sense that he would be willing to repeal any of the 9 bad laws you see? Like, would he be willing to backtrack on other environmental policies?
Well, we're talking about that. I mean, I think he understands that there needs to be a repeal or substantial revision. And let's be frank, I mean, he did repeal the retail carbon tax. He did pause for 60 days, but also delayed the implementation of the net zero cars when he realized that it was impossible to implement it in January of 2026. That was one of the ones that was on our list as well. So I think he's demonstrated that if something isn't working, that he's prepared to repeal or modify. And so I don't want to get ahead of our potential agreement, but do know that that is factoring into the discussions that we hope to have an answer for by Grey Cup.
What happened to the Alberta office? Is it still open?
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah, and in fact, it's yeah, James Carpenter. You know, I guess I'm just surprised that we didn't do it earlier than now. It's one of the things that has been so terrific about it is that this is where all the ambassadors as well are, and all the embassies are. So so James Carpenter not only spends a lot of time talking to elected officials here, but also ambassadors of different countries, selling the Alberta story and selling the Alberta message. What we discovered is that we are the best advocate for Alberta interests. And so we're doing that more directly, and this is a perfect place to do that from. As a result, we've decided that we need to spend a bit more time in Quebec as well. We're very pleased that all the Quebec-based companies that are investing in Alberta, the Caisse de dépôt placement already has a number of investments in Alberta. CAE is also an air training as well as defense company that just announced a partnership with WestJet. And we've got several other companies that I think have mutual interests in Alberta and Quebec, and so we're going to spend a lot more time there.
Things there, just about Mark Carney's visit to Washington. I'm just hoping to know, what do you think he should achieve?
Well, I wish him well. I think all of us are rooting for the Prime Minister to come home with one of two things: either some substantial advancement on the time frame to renegotiate the Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. I think that that might be a little bit optimistic, but at the minimum, try to find some kind of compromise around autos and steel and aluminum. And perhaps even softwood lumber. Those are the things that are hurting our economy the most. And so I wish him well. I think it's good that he's down there on a relationship-building expedition. A lot of times these trade deals get advanced because of a good personal relationship between the leaders. They seem to have started off on a good foot, and I hope that continues. Thanks.
Thank you. This concludes the press conference. Merci, c'est ce qui conclut cette conférence de presse.